When we are meant for something in this life, it is meant to bring us joy. It is meant to bring us abundance, and it is meant to bring us forward on our own journeys. So even any challenges that you come across in this business, we want you to look at that as part of your journey, not as a setback, not as something that is trying to prevent you from doing what you're meant to be doing. It is simply another piece of the puzzle that is going to launch you forward on your journey. Welcome to the Akashic Recordings. I'm Annette Deleu, Akashic conduit, channel, and spiritual guidance coach.
And I'm Julia Nalivaiko, storyteller and creative producer of conscious media content, such as this podcast. What you're about to hear is a real-life Akashic Records session with Annette and one of her clients, recorded with their permission. For privacy, their names have been changed, but everything else is real.
Stay tuned to the end of each episode, where we deep dive into subjects that come up throughout the session.
Flora has been working with Annette for over a year to develop her spiritual gifts, as well as her soul-aligned jewellery business. In this session, they discuss how her progress in business and her spiritual growth are intertwined. After which, the guides have a surprise for Flora.
So tell me what we are discussing today.
I think my business and its soul and how it's manifesting, how I interact with my business. So lots of questions, but just wanted to give you some options.
What we're going to do as usual is we're going to sort of let the guides tell us where we need to go first, okay? So your root chakra is doing quite well at the moment. Like it's doing like a beautiful fire dance, and I'm hearing laughter as well. It's almost sort of, I don't want to say maniacal laughter, but it almost is. It's almost like you've gotten to the point of surrender where, you know, when things don't particularly go right with you or with your business or stability, I am hearing it is, you know, regarding the business, you've really started to learn how to just take it as it comes and go in the direction that the universe is trying to push you. And you're learning to start to trust. So oftentimes when we are so focused on something, when we're so focused on, let's say, making something happen or forcing something, you know, we exert a lot of effort. And what I'm feeling in your root chakra right now is that you've let go of that exertion. And that's where the sort of laughter is coming in, because oftentimes when we release that, we need some sort of release, whether it's laughter, whether it's tears, whether it's any sort of purging of that energy. And you're almost about ready to just be in that flow of what is meant for you, as opposed to the pushing energy. Like you're right on the brink. You're right at the precipice of that.
You can't see me, but I'm grinning from ear to ear because that's exactly what I feel, and that, you know, what I feel that I want to say I've worked hard on, that I've focused on, is that real sense of release and just of flow, really. So perfect.
So your sacral chakra is, I'm getting the image of, you know, your creative self looking at your wrist as if you're wearing a watch and tapping the watch going, okay, it's about time. Come on, let's go. Because your sacral is waiting for that root to finish purging and going into that flow. So then your creative energy can completely take over. And that's what it's sort of waiting for. Because once you do that, once you're in the flow, the ideas and the abundance and all of that is moving towards you is just going to sort of lock into place, and you're going to feel it, and you're going to feel the energy of that. And then you're going to understand this is what it means to be in the flow and how easy it is, and how the ideas are just going to come, and the inspiration is just going to come. So your sacral is patiently waiting for all of that to happen.
I'm just observing this in my day-to-day life. And so that is exactly, I think, what I've been feeling, that sense of waiting and that sense of the in-between of knowing that I'm actually getting closer to the shore that I was aiming to go towards, but not quite there yet.
And sometimes that can be frustrating, especially if you can see it. You can see that shore, as you were saying. You can see it and you're just like, I'm almost there. I'm almost there. Please let me get there. So,
yes, exactly.
Yeah. And they're saying that there's nothing you need to do in terms of moving faster or moving slower or anything like that. Like, you're moving at exactly the pace you need to. You're doing the things that you need to. So there's nothing to worry about there. It's just a matter of the time unfolding and allowing your chakras to clean out the old energy, as well as your spirit and your higher self to connect with the heart and the body. So everything is in alignment, so you are able to then embody that new energy. When we go into new energy, it is important that we acknowledge the old energy and then lovingly either integrate or let it go. And so right now you're in the process of that filtering almost. It's like your higher self is sort of saying, oh, okay, so what do we need to keep? What do we need to let go of? Okay, so then let's move that beautiful divine energy into the heart chakra, keeping us grounded to this earth plane while we access the Akashic records. I want to thank Akula, my Akashic guide, for being here. Thank you to Archangel Metatron and Archangel Sandalphon for being here as well. We're going to open the Akashic records today. Where do we need to go first? Business, of course. Yeah. So you're still gathering information. You're still gathering the information that you need for the next phase of the business. And right now it's like you're almost a little bit prematurely trying to anchor it. And they're saying not to do that. Yeah, they're saying that if you are able to just allow things to come, information to come, opportunities to come as they are, and don't rest on anything yet. Don't sort of settle on anything yet, because there's still more to come and you need more information before you can make some decisions. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about the direction that you're wanting to take the business in.
So there are some decisions that have already been made, including there is a brand new collection that is being manufactured at the moment, as well as new pieces. And these pieces are very much, I think, embodying the new energy that I'm wanting to bring in. And one of the latest developments is I have not only been contacted by Merlin, but also by Galadriel, and being brought messages that Middle Earth energy is very prominent as the foundations of the business, and that I'm very much wanting the business to embody that magic, that connection with nature, that the business should become a very safe place for people to come and find messages, find themselves through the jewelry, through the readings that I'm offering, through anything else that might come. You know, I'm working on finding my voice and representing the soul of the business as a very pure elemental wisdom and guidance in the world.
Okay, so one of the things that they're showing me is that you are going absolutely in the right direction. The thing that they're talking about, it's all about the grounding. Okay, so you're talking about grounding the business in Mother Earth, right? And so you're grounding the business into Gaia. Now, what needs to happen, though, is that the elements that you're infusing in the work, they need to also be grounded. So you were talking about Merlin and Galadriel, and those were the guides that you have been working with for some time. Now, people in general will understand the energy of the work that you're putting in, and what they are going to do is be able to ground that into their own lives. So there are certain pieces that will come into play over the next several months that will help you understand what that means. So essentially, when we have our own guidance, when we have our own intuition, when we have our own ability to tap into the energy that we are, that attracts other energies that are of like energy, right? Now, the challenge with this is the fact that, yes, of course, we have this beautiful energy that we're working with, but also you want to be able to reach the people who may not be at that energy yet, because what your work is going to be doing is actually helping people get to that new level of energy. So there are going to be some things that are going to come up for you in your intuition, in your practice, that are going to allow you to be able to see what it is that you need to infuse in your work to be able to gather those other people that would be really attracted to your work, that would be attracted to the energy. But let's say they are using that as a means to sort of level up, if you will. Does that make sense?
It does. And you've actually told me when you were channeling Merlin for me, and we were discussing about the frequency of my work and the energy. And he talked about how it was important to have low, middle, and high energy creations to be able to meet people at the energetic level that they were currently at. Because for some people, it would be too much. Also, it would take them out of their body and they wouldn't be able to integrate also the energy. Yeah. So yes, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, great. So we're going to take a look at a past life that you had that is going to sort of help you in that energy of being able to not only stay present, but then also to be in that beautiful creative energy and have it be limitless. Because in the past, they're showing me that like you had a tendency to burn yourself out a little bit. And that is something that is not going to be happening anymore because you're going to be in the flow. You're not going to be in the resistance like we talked about earlier. Okay. So they're going to show us this past lifetime that is going to help you with the business. They're saying to me that you've had this business for a long time. So yeah. regardless of the fact that you started it in this lifetime, you have had this business before.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It wasn't quite exactly in the same way. So you were a metalsmith at a particular period of time. So this was a much more natural way of infusing your energy into the metal. Because when you're working with metal, when you're forging it, when you're doing the things that you need to do, and I'm seeing you were making armor of some sort. So it wasn't necessarily for spiritual use, but it was for protection. And you were actually infusing your own energy into the armor and allowing that divine protection to be infused in the armor. So whoever wore it not only had the metal actual physical protection, but also had energetic protection. And you didn't even realize that you were doing this. You were a man in this lifetime that we're seeing. You were very connected to the divine at the time. I'm hearing the words pious. You were connected to religion also, but you had a deep, deep belief that the protection from the divine was absolute. You had no question in your mind that it would work and that it would happen. You had a reputation. You had a reputation of your armor being unbreakable. And it was because of this. You had kings coming to you. You had really high profile people coming to you for this work. And I'm seeing a lot of money, a lot of abundance. Like I'm seeing that your armor literally saved a king, and the king basically is throwing you like a pouch of just like a huge amount of gold. Everyone else thought it was just your metalsmithing skills, when in fact it was your energy that was doing this. And it's very sweet because I'm seeing you take some of the metal pieces that were scrap, and I'm seeing you turn them into like a little, almost like a bow or a flower, and you're giving it to a little girl to put in her hair. So not only was your skill in the armor, but your skill was also in the creative. So like the beauty that you brought to the armor, the beauty that you brought to these little scrap pieces that you would give to people just to make them happy. You brought a lot of joy to people. You brought a lot of comfort. And this is what they want you to tap into for this business that you're currently re-energizing, is what they're saying. So that feeling that not only are you offering up this beautiful divine protection for people, this beautiful way for them to help them level up in their spiritual journey, but then also something that is making them feel good because it's beautiful and they love wearing it. They love having it with them. It makes them feel safe and secure. Can you feel into the energy of this particular lifetime?
I could actually. It was interesting because when you were talking about the armor, I kept hearing that I'm also an artist. I'm also into fine and beautiful. And I can make small things as well. I could sort of see myself working in the sun with the elements. So yes, I would be forging and I needed fire and I needed all of that. But I feel also that, the fresh air, and I see the trees and I see the sun. So there was a strong connection with nature as well.
Yeah, the place that I'm seeing you work is exactly that. It's almost like an open space. It does have walls and it has a bit of a roof to it, but it's not completely enclosed. It is open to the elements. Okay, so is there any other information we need to know about this particular lifetime? No, she feels into the energy of it. That's all we needed her to know. Okay, great. Yeah, they wanted you to know that this is something that you have done in the past. This is an innate talent that you're tapping into. Okay, so do you have any other questions about the business?
It feels very much that there is a sense of purpose, and there is a soul in that business that is very much able also to make its own decision, so that I'm here to sort of guide it and infuse it. And there's that strong connection, obviously, with the earth. So it's, putting Middle Earth magic also means tapping into Gaia and embodying that sort of new business paradigm. So working less, but to achieve more.
Yeah.
It was interesting what you said about the chakras, because all of my senses are screaming in excitement, with everything that's going on today. I saw a couple of visuals about the new website, which are simply so beautiful that I'm elated. But I'm still able to ground myself back in and not react about, oh my God, but I wanted them out in the world like now, and being able to really calm myself down and say, well, I'm so certain now that it is exactly what I'm meant to do. I'm able to contain my excitement at the moment.
Right. Well, and that's also something that we work on in the spiritual journey, which is there's nothing wrong with being excited and there's nothing wrong with having that elation. But when we cross over from excitement and elation to expectation, and we start really clinging on to something in particular, that's when we start going a little bit astray, right? Yes. Because being in the flow is about allowing, and it's about being able to be excited about where you're going without attaching yourself to what it's going to look like, how it's going to come to fruition, all of that. Everyone struggles with that. I struggle with that. It's like the second you get excited about something, you're like, oh my God, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. And then it doesn't happen the way that you wanted it to, or the way that you expected it to. And is that going to disappoint you? Or are you going to be open to whatever this new direction is going to be that the universe is showing you? And can you do that without the expectation? So then you can actually be not only surprised, but more elated than you would have been otherwise.
Yeah, and I am working harder. I mean, the one that is particularly testing me, and I am really trying to keep in the flow, is that website, because we've been at it. I got the first visuals early May, and it is moving at its own relaxed pace. And I'm really working hard not to push my creative and say to her, how you doing? And, because we were meant to be live by now, and not to push her, and to sort of understand that through what's coming online for me, I'm adding to the magic, and I'm giving her more energy and more information, and that going live later will be even more spectacular.
Yeah. And one of the things they're showing me is that they want you to be in a space of like sort of changing the energy that you're giving towards the creative who's working on the website. So anytime you're anxious or, anticipating or wanting things to move faster and you're sending her that energy, they want you to just take a moment, just stop and take a deep breath. And just acknowledge the fact that you're feeling that anxiousness, and then switch the energy to sending her and sending the website itself a beautiful, rich, lush image. So I'm seeing like an image of, like you were saying, like Gaia, sending an image of gorgeous hills that look like fairy hills, like just sending that image or that energy towards the website, because if you're infusing your energy into the creative and into the website of anxiousness or impatience, it's going to sort of have a little bit of a resistance effect on it. Not to say that you're holding it back, because that's not the case. They want to make sure that they're clear about that. But it's going to unfold in the exact divine timing that it needs to. And they're saying that that's going to be your best tool, is sort of envisioning what it is, the energy that's going to come through this website.
Yeah. And a week or so ago, I was anxious about, we're not making progress. I haven't heard about her. So I looked in the cards, which calmed me down, because it kept showing me all the good things in divine timing, how it's going to be beautiful. So I think that's what I intuitively started to feel as well, that the website needed that nourishment and that nurturing of good, positive energy rather than anxiety.
Yeah. And this practice is going to filter in through your whole life. The first step is to start observing and acknowledging that what is going on doesn't have anything to do with you. And so when it comes to this particular type of alchemy, which is essentially changing who you are and how you show up in situations and creating a different energy, and that's what you are in the process of doing. So right now, it's the same with the business. You are identifying the energy that you are outputting towards the business, and then you are shifting and changing it into what you truly want to be. So actively, consciously co-creating with the universe what you want it to be. And so then the next step after that is going to be that instinct that you tap into as the business is running. Once the website is up and everything's going, as challenges or something comes up for you, you're going to have that beautiful skill to say, okay, I see what's going on here. And now I just know how I'm going to either react, how I'm going to interact, how I am going to move forward, take action, whatever it is that you need to do. And so this is ultimately what we're talking about, is that balance of that divine feminine, divine masculine energy within yourself. So right now you're working on the feminine, and then eventually with the masculine, you'll land where you need to be. Because if we work on the action taking, the masculine energy, without having that balance of the divine feminine behind it in the exact right energy that you want it to be in, then the action is going to fall short. Does that make sense?
Yeah, complete sense. Yeah, complete sense.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the guys, is there any other information that you would like to share about her business at this time? There are several things that we would like to share. The other aspect of this business is that it is your divine gift to the world. We want you to know this. It is incredibly important for you to understand this and ground this. The reason why is because it is something you are meant to do. You know this in your heart. It is something that will bring so much transformation and joy to people. When we are meant for something in this life, it is meant to bring us joy. It is meant to bring us abundance, and it is meant to bring us forward on our own journeys. So even any challenges that you come across in this business, we want you to look at that as part of your journey, not as a setback, not as something that is trying to prevent you from doing what you're meant to be doing. It is simply another piece of the puzzle that is going to launch you forward on your journey. Okay, thank you. Is there anything else? Not at this time. Okay, thank you. Okay, so how does that feel for you?
Yeah, it's wonderful, because it's given me a really fantastic assessment of where I am, the progress, the work, the healing that I thought had taken place. It's given me room for improvement, and it's reassured me that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, and that everything is working as it should. So it's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so let's see where we need to go next. I'm not sure that this was something that you were asking about, but they're saying something about your father.
Okay. No, I wasn't asking about it, but I'd be happy to hear whatever they have to say.
I'm just hearing she knows what she needs to work on with him. There are things that you understand now that you didn't know before, and it's time to revisit your relationship with him.
My dad's actually passed away, so he's in spirit.
And actually, that makes it much easier. In fact, it makes it a lot easier, because
Yeah.
What you're working with is the relationship that you had with him in the past. The difference is when you move into brand new energies, which you have, and you've moved into new energies very quickly. What happens is you have an entirely new perspective now. And so you can go back and revisit some of these situations or relationships with loved ones through a different lens. Even when our loved ones cross over, our relationship still continues from the standpoint of they still live on in our hearts. We still love them. We still have connections to them, whether it is a loving relationship or whether it's a traumatic relationship, it doesn't matter. It's still somebody who has been a part of our lives, right? They're saying to me that there's one particular wound that you had with him that you did a lot of work on in your younger years that they want you to connect with now.
That came through in the last session we had about both my father and my mother. There were a couple of things. There was the power of failure, which is not being able to keep the family together. Mm-hmm. But the second thing is that I really wasn't protected by either my father or my mother. If anything, I was almost in a position of being the parent and then the children. There was real sense of me being at times more mature and better able to look at the situation rather than them. So the wound would have been maybe that I felt I had to take responsibilities very early on as a child. So there was a feeling that both my parents approached me when I would have been maybe 6 or 7 to tell me about their suspicion that the other was having an affair, and that I remember very vividly being in a bathroom with my father, and he was sitting down, leaning on the bathtub and crying as he was telling me, I think your mother is having an affair. And I remember being both trying to console him as well as not really understanding it all. But when I was 17, I had a beautiful relationship with a young Moroccan boy who was absolutely gorgeous. And I was asked to stop seeing him by my father. And I was very, very hurt about that as well. And then the third incident is when I was already married, but when my father and my mother divorced when I left home. And then my father met this new woman who then even married her. And I went to meet her for the first time. And my father knew that I was vegetarian, and she'd served 5 meat dishes. And then she sort of aggressed me during the meal, saying that I hadn't been taking care of my father and not been in touch. And my father said nothing to protect me as well. So that was that feeling of protection as well that I don't think I always had.
The thread that they're showing me that we need to look at is a feeling of helplessness. So in all 3 of these situations you have just outlined, the helplessness of not being able to console your father or to do something when he was confiding in you about your mother having an affair, the fact that he's telling you that you can't date the person that you want to date, the helplessness of not being able to choose for yourself. And then likewise, the helplessness to not be able to defend yourself or to understand why this person was telling you that you were not doing a good job in taking care of your father, or whatever other words that she used. So what I would like to do is I would like to address this feeling of helplessness. And this is something that when you are addressing certain wounds, sometimes this can't really be seen until other things have been healed. And so you've done a lot of healing surrounding this already. It's this one piece of helplessness that needs to be released simply because you are not helpless. So what we're going to do is we're going to work with those previous versions of yourself. And I'm going to have you have a little conversation with those previous versions of yourself and help you to say the things that you need to say to that version of you that will help you understand that you are not helpless, that in each one of these situations, there's really no action that needs to be taken unless it is divinely in your heart to take that action. So imagine that beautiful bubble of divine light protection around you. And I would like you to ask for each one of those versions of you to be with you in the bubble, all three of them. And I would like you to imagine that you're joining hands. I would like you to offer up the feeling of holding space. So you're giving that tool to those previous versions of yourself, knowing that you don't need to do anything. You don't need to help him, save him, do anything. All you can do at that moment and at both of those moments and any moments in between is hold space for him. Because you are the stronger soul, you are able to be there and listen without having to do anything. So from that perspective, you are not helpless. You are, in fact, holding a container of space for him to be able to express whatever emotions he's feeling, whatever emotions your stepmother was feeling, and not allow it to affect you personally. Have compassion for maybe the sadness or the grief or the pain that he was in when you were younger. There is still a small element of blame towards your father regarding the boy that you very much loved. And they're asking me to actually tap into the records to take a look at your relationship with this boy. So was this boy part of Natalie's soul family? He was not part of her soul family, but he was a soulmate. He was somebody that was sent to her exactly as her intuition was telling her, was to show her what true unconditional love can look like. It was an innocent love. It was untainted by anything from the outside world. It was something that she could see, that she could possibly anchor into this lifetime. It was almost otherworldly. It was not time for them to come together. They have been in other lifetimes together. This lifetime, it was meant to be a brief encounter. From that perspective, she is absolutely correct. It did serve several purposes. It served a purpose to remind her who she is. In a previous lifetime that they had together, energetically, you gave him a piece of energetic information. He was holding it for you so he could give it to you in this lifetime. It's almost as if you send somebody a note from the past and say, here, give me this note in the next lifetime so I can remember what it is that I'm here to do. And that's essentially what you did in the previous lifetime with him and he with you. He gave you an energetic note as well in the past to then give to you in the future. It was an exchange. I keep on hearing, have a beautiful life from the both of you. It's like you exchanged the energetic information and then you embraced and you say to each other, have a beautiful life and I will see you in the next. This was all happening under the surface. You may not have experienced this while you were going through it, but you felt the energetic impact of it. So it was not your father's fault that you did not continue seeing each other. It was, in fact, divinely guided. Your father was divinely guided to step in. If you can imagine being intertwined with an energy that is so yummy and beautiful as you had with him. Oftentimes with humans, they just don't do the work they're meant to do, or they don't go on the path they're meant to go on, because if you are just in this unconditionally loving bliss, there's really little reason for you to work harder and move forward, because that energy is so beautiful to be in. So although it may seem like it was unfair at the time, it was in fact for your highest good. And you will see him in the next lifetime, wherever you may be. So I would like you to check in with all three of those versions of yourself and see how they're feeling about that sense of helplessness now.
I think it's gone. There's a real higher perspective and really just seeing the purpose of every single experience and how it's brought me to where I am today.
Beautiful. So I want to encourage you that when you have these types of emotions that pop up, explore it in this way and continue to do so, because you might have something that pops up and you're like, I already dealt with that. And that's something that, let's say Annette and I talked about, or you and your coach talked about, or whatever it happens to be, but it's popping up for a reason. And it may not be the same angle or the same reason why you looked at it the first time. So if it does come into your consciousness, write it down and then just let your guides tell you what it is that you need to look at from that perspective that you are now.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. All right. So we're going to close out the session. I would like to thank Akula, my Akashic guide, for being here. And I would like to thank Archangel Metatron and Archangel Sandalphon for giving us the information that we needed today. Thank you. The records are closed. The records are closed. The records are closed. Thank you. Wonderful. Okay. How do you feel?
Wonderful. Everything was as I expected, except this, my God, what you said about It was just, I mean, I've been married to my husband for 30 years. I hold so much love, and I have such that perfect memory of our relationship. It was just so beautiful the way it came through. And I really feel a great sense of healing, and dare I say it, a great sense of anticipation about meeting in the next life, because I think of him still so often. I mean, I was 17 and now 58, so it's a long time ago. But he's still, the energy and the purity. I think the way you describe it, the purity of that relationship is still very present.
Beautiful. I'm so glad that the guides were able to give that to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was very unexpected. Very beautiful. Thank you.
Beautiful. You're very welcome.
We want to thank Flora for her participation and for her openness in this discussion with Annette today. Annette, I loved this session.
Yeah?
That last plot twist, just wow.
Yeah. I love it when the guides really pull through something that is super unexpected, something that the client is not even asking about, but it just kind of comes through. It's beautiful.
That was very cool. So you've been working with Flora for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just start with like a little bit of background, what your experience has been working with her.
As you know, usually I don't remember any of the sessions. However, with Flora specifically, she came here to Paris for one of the workshops that I do. It was incredibly powerful to be able to meet her because we have been working together for this past year. So it was wonderful to see her. It was wonderful to work with her and see how much her gifts have just completely taken off and come online in the last year.
And I think it's really nice to hear like a more mature take on the spiritual journey. And I feel like, I mean, I don't know how long she has been on this journey herself prior to working with you, but it really feels like she's very connected and embodied in her spirituality.
Yeah. And the thing is that it's not always like that when you first start out, of course. And I imagine it wasn't like that for her either. But there comes a point in the spiritual journey, I feel, where it's like you just grab on to the energy and it just takes you. And then once you're on that path, everything just sort of unfolds and it's like there's no stopping it. And I think I happened to meet Flora at exactly that moment where I was helping her sort of get to that next little level. And once she got there, she just ran with it, because I have clients that I work with weekly. I have clients that I work with monthly and yearly. And with Flora, I've really only had maybe 4 sessions with her, I think, before she came to Paris to do the workshop with me. So, 4 sessions over a year, it's not a lot. And so this was basically a credit to all of the work that she has done.
And it's very inspiring, I think, as well.
Yeah.
I hope other people listening will feel that as well, that not only it's possible to get to that point, but it doesn't have to be something super far away in the future either.
Yeah, because a lot of times when people hear my story, they're like, oh God, it took her forever. And that is true, because I think I'm stubborn. Well, no, that's not true. I had a lot of shadow work I needed to get through to get to where I am. So it's all individual. It just depends on what you have to work through. And it's very possible that Flora had done a lot of her shadow work already without even realizing that that's what she was doing.
So a strong theme in this particular session was the fact of infusing matter with energy. This is something that you mentioned she does in her current line of work. So something that she has done in previous lives in the same or similar line of work. Mm-hmm. So let's break that down a little bit. What does that mean to infuse a particular type of energy into what we do?
I'm going to reference a movie here because it's exactly what I'm talking about. And for those of you who are maybe not old enough to remember this movie, I recommend you go see it. It's a Spanish movie, actually, and it's called Like Water for Chocolate. It is about a woman who makes beautiful, beautiful meals for her family. every time she makes a meal, the meal takes on the emotion she's feeling while she's cooking it. So she's cooking a paella, let's say, and she is sobbing because she has just lost her lover and she is upset and crying and grieving. And she serves the meal and everybody who eats the meal starts sobbing. Likewise, when she's feeling amorous because she was with her lover, then everybody who ate the meal started all of a sudden feeling amorous, So it depicts it beautifully of how we infuse our energy in everything. So it's not just that Flora was infusing her energy into the jewelry that she makes. It's that we infuse our energy with everything that we do. This is why oftentimes I tell my clients, if you're going to communicate with somebody, really check in with your own energy to see where you are before you communicate, because what leads is your energy, not your words. Your words are what the other person hears. Your energy is what the other person feels. And that is what's going to make all the difference in the world. So you can say one thing, but if your energy is saying something completely different and the other person is a very empathic person, they're going to pick up on that. So that's on a very simple level of how that energy is always infused in what we do. When it comes to objects, if many of you out there use crystals, that's a really good, simple spiritual example of infusing energy in an object, because if you have a particular crystal that you'd like to work with, whether it's labradorite or rose quartz, that when we work with crystals, we first clear them and then we charge them. And when we charge them, we basically put our energy into that crystal and ask the crystal to assist us in what we want assistance with. And it's very similar to what Flora would be doing because, her jewelry is made with crystals, essentially. They're gems.
But if we take this to a slightly more down-to-earth level, so if a person creates something, be it a piece of furniture, just an everyday object, how does their energy get infused into said object? And furthermore, how does that then affect the object?
When you go to, let's say, an antique store and you see an object or you see a piece of furniture and you can feel the energy of a piece, right? Even if you maybe can't feel exactly what the energy of the thing is, but you can feel that it has a history. Versus if you're in an IKEA and you come across a piece of furniture, if you feel into that right now, like the feeling that you have when you see an antique piece of furniture and a piece of furniture from IKEA, the piece of furniture from IKEA is not going to have much energy feeling to it because it was most likely made in a factory, probably didn't see a whole lot of physical hands, probably didn't have a whole lot of energy infused into it, right? So when you look at the antique piece of furniture that has history, it's had people sitting on it. You can put your energy into literally everything if you are intentional about it. But even if you're not intentional about it, you're still doing it anyway. We're all energy. The table is energy. The couch is energy. Plants are energy. We are. All of us are. And if I can be affected by your energy, then why couldn't the table be affected by your energy? Why couldn't the ring you're wearing be affected by your energy?
So then if the ring is made by Flora and is then worn by another person, what happens to the energy of that ring? Does it keep carrying the energy that it was infused with? Does it take on the new energy of the wearer? What's the lifetime of energy infusion?
That's a really great question. It depends on if the person is buying it with the intention that Flora has is that the person who would be buying it in order to have the sort of energy that she's already infused into the piece. That's part of what they're buying. The piece of jewelry would take on the properties not only of what Flora has infused in it, but then it would also meld with the energy of the person who's wearing it. So eventually, it would almost create a new energy based on the original energy that was infused in it, along with the new wearer.
You mentioned that in a past life, she was in a very similar line of work and would infuse a protective energy into the armor that she would create. So let's talk about protective energy. How does that differ from what she's doing now, for example, and how is it generated?
It doesn't differ at all. It's the same thing. The only thing that changes is the intention. technically, Flora could actually infuse one of her pieces of jewelry with an element or a feeling of protection. If she has a particular gem or stone that has those properties to begin with, she might decide to have that piece of jewelry be an element of protection. For example, I was very much drawn to a labradorite necklace when I was going through the beginning of my spiritual awakening. And I wore that thing every day for 4 years, never took it off. I had already infused in the stone that it was going to protect me, because when I read the properties, it said that it was an incredible spiritual protection. So because I read that, I was like, okay, so I can amplify that. So I can amplify the properties that it already has. That's the other thing, is that when something is of a particular energy, amplifying those properties is actually much easier than infusing it with completely different properties that it doesn't already have. Armor, for example, is meant to protect. So it already has the energetic properties of protection. So basically what she's doing is she's amplifying that energy that is already existing within the product. When she does that, it's no different than me telling you or anyone else, put up your bubble of protection. Because when you go outside and you're on the metro or you're doing other things, you've got everybody else's energy swirling around you. If you don't want it affecting you, put up your bubble of protection. So it's no different than that, except for she was putting in protection for the person's body, for the person's physical vessel versus the energetic protection.
That makes a lot of sense. And that takes me to another question very nicely. You channel a message from the guides in Flora's session telling her that her business will bring transformation and joy to people. Is this through the energy infused in the jewelry, or is this through a different means?
Give me a second. I'm going to check in because I actually don't know. I have to check in to see what they meant by that. Part of the joy that it brings and that it will be bringing is the groundedness of Flora's energy. She has that connection to Merlin, to Galadriel and Middle Earth that we talked about. And this is something that we will discuss a little bit later. She has this connection to the earth that is super grounded. It allows people to connect to the earth and feel that goodness and that joy of being connected. So it is not only the infusion of joy into the pieces itself, but it is the grounding of that joy. Joy is fleeting without being grounded. If joy is not grounded in something that is tangible and real for your human experience, it does feel fleeting to you. Her pieces will infuse that energy of groundedness and allow the wearers to cultivate their own personal joy of what that means for them.
What does it mean for joy to be grounded in the physical experience?
You can laugh and still be sad. You can show outward joy and still have grief inside you. The physical embodiment of joy means that you feel the joy within your core. You feel it in your heart, and it is grounded in who you are. Most people on this planet pretend to be joyful, or they have joyful moments, but like we said, they are fleeting. When you ground the joy, it is like grounding love. It cannot be taken away.
But what does it mean to ground joy?
Grounding joy or grounding love will look different for every single person. It is not a blanket statement of what we can tell you. But we can give you an example of grounding love would look like having a fight with somebody, but still holding that love within your heart for the person. Grounding joy can look like feeling sadness, but that not being the predominant feeling that you have inside. The predominant feeling you have inside is joy, and the sadness just comes for a visit. For most people, it is the opposite, where sadness takes up residence and joy is just the visitor.
That makes sense. Yeah, I understand. And so just going back to Flora's function in helping people to do this, it said because her energy is so grounded that it helps them to ground in their joy. Is that right?
Correct. And it's not to say that one piece of jewelry can do all of that for somebody, but it is something that aids us in doing that. For example, when I wore that labradorite pendant on its own, did it offer me energetic protection? Maybe not. But because I infused it with my belief that it could, and then actually amplified that by asking it to protect me and infusing it with my energy to protect, it then in fact did. It's not that you can just go along your path and go against your guidance and make all the willy-nilly free will decisions you want to make and then hope that a piece of jewelry is going to correct your path. That's not what they're saying. What they're saying is that it can aid you in guiding you to find that peace within yourself, to be able to find that joy, to anchor that joy and guide you in that direction.
In your channel, the guides mentioned Merlin and Galadriel and Middle Earth energy, which Flora spoke about during the session as well. Mm-hmm. Can you help unpack the meaning of this energy?
Yeah, sure. Merlin's energy is very, very real, and it's very, very big. Merlin works with quite a few people that I've worked with personally. But when we call in energy from what we would deem as fictional places or fictional characters, I mean, this is just me, Annette, talking. This is not the channel, but who's to say that these places don't exist, right?
They exist somewhere.
Exactly.
In someone's imagination.
Right. I know a lot of people who work with dragon energy, and dragon energy absolutely exists. I've seen it. There's no reason why you couldn't work with that energy. So if you want to be more of a realist and say, come on, it's a fantasy book that Tolkien wrote and this person is infusing that energy. Well, so what? The energy is beautiful. It's very much about connecting to the earth. It's very much about having that beautiful magic within your experience. For Flora, Galadriel is one of her guides as well.
Who's he?
Are you meaning in the Lord of the Rings?
Oh, it's a Lord of the Rings guy.
Well, that's the thing. So Galadriel is the name of an elf. Actually, it's a woman in the Lord of the Rings. I personally don't know if it's the same energy as one of her guides, because here's the thing. When I met one of my guides, the very first time I met one of my guides, he presented himself to me like Gandalf because he knew that I loved Lord of the Rings. So he thought that presenting himself to me as Gandalf would be the best way that I would receive him. So that often happens where our guides will actually take the form of something that they know we love. When we are embodying that energy, or we are working with that energy, or we are infusing that energy, it is about getting to the core essence of what that energy is. And so for Middle Earth, it is very much about connection to the land. It's about magic, right? It's about all of that. Just think about little hobbit holes and coziness and all of that, We can pretty much infuse any energy into whatever we do, whether we think it's imaginary or not. Because like you said, it could exist somewhere.
So still on the subject of infusing energy, Flora mentions that at an earlier session, you had advised her to have pieces at different levels of frequency so that it could meet people where they are.
If you look at crystals, there are any number of crystals that you can wear that would shift and change your vibration based on what you're wearing, how you're wearing it, if it's touching your body. So, for example, there's a stone called moldavite, which is very, very popular at the moment. It has such a high frequency that it will give you a headache within a couple of minutes of wearing it. It has that high of a vibration and that intense of a vibration. Whereas a rose quartz, super soft, super gentle. Anyone can wear it and it's not going to affect you in any way. There are plenty of other crystals out there that can give you really crazy dreams. I've heard of people sleeping with certain crystals under their pillow and being able to astral project or being able to lucid dream, things like that. So when you're talking about jewelry is made from everything in earth. It's made from metals, it's made from crystals and stones. And so all of these things have these particular energetic properties. Whether you know about those properties or not doesn't matter. It's still going to have the effect on you. Now, I would say a majority of the stones that most people wear, the ones that you see in little shops everywhere, right? It's like somebody has selenite or somebody has a rose quartz or amethyst, things like that. Well, all of those are very benign energies in terms of They're not going to be super high frequency. They're going to be pretty much for everyone. So that would be like tier 1 for what I was telling Flora to do. So like tier 1 would be sort of that level that pretty much can touch everyone. And then level 2, maybe that's going to be moving into your lapis lazuli, or maybe moving into apatite or some other type of crystal that has a little bit more oomph to it, if you will. It has a little bit more energy, a little bit more strength. And then the third level, or the third tier that I was recommending, that would be your moldavite, or that would be your, your higher frequency crystals.
Do precious stones fit in this category, or where do they sit?
Some of them can, depending on what you're using. And a lot of what Flora is using in her jewelry is not necessarily your everyday run-of-the-mill emerald, diamond, that kind of thing, even though she does have those. But she does have, stones like morganite. Morganite is something that I'm wearing right now. And morganite is something that is a much stronger energy than rose quartz. It still has that love energy, but it's much, much stronger in energy. So the thing is that it's not just about the properties of the stones themselves. It's also the energy that she's infusing in it. It's a combination of those two things. Let's say one of her pieces has like a blue topaz in it. So a blue topaz energy for me, like when I'm feeling into the energy of it, it doesn't feel like that super beginner energy. It feels like sort of that mid energy. I'm not sure why I feel that, but I'm just feeling into it right now. And so she could possibly amplify that blue topaz into something that is a higher energy than what it actually is, because it's got that propensity. If she was working with a rose quartz to try to amplify that to like a higher frequency piece, she would have to add something else to it to make it more high frequency. Most crystals and stones can harmonize together to create something better and stronger than if it were on its own.
So jewelry design is an energetic work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So then, now that we know what different levels of frequency in jewelry kind of looks like, let's talk about how that can affect people. As you mentioned that it can help people to raise their frequency, to kind of level up by, having a piece of jewelry that's like higher in frequency, etc. Equally, my question is also, what is the danger in having a piece of jewelry that is too high for someone?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, if it's too high frequency, it's going to give you headaches. It could make you feel super ungrounded, like you'd feel like super, super spacey. Some people can report feeling nauseous, things like that with certain crystals. I have had experiences with other friends of mine who have walked into crystal shops and literally felt like they needed to leave because they could not handle the energy, because it was too strong, it was too much, and it was making them feel nauseous. For me personally, I don't have that issue at all. I can be in the presence of all kinds of crystals and in the shops, and it doesn't necessarily affect me in that way. But yeah, so there is that where it can have a physical effect on you if it's too high energy.
All right, let me step in as a little bit of a skeptic on this subject matter.
Yeah.
So I've never been into crystals. And that's not to say I don't like them. It's not to say I don't love jewelry. I do. But I've never been somebody who's, sensed the energy of crystals and things like that. And I've never felt any ill effects from them. So what do you say to that? Because I'm sure that there'll be other people with that kind of point of view.
I mean, it's all about everybody's individual experience. Like I said, for me, I feel the same way that you do in that respect, that I've never been in a space where a crystal has had that deep of an effect on me. But at the same time, I've never worn moldavite for days at a time to see what it would do to me,
So experiment to come.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I had actually been looking for a moldavite piece because I thought it was a very interesting stone and I wanted to wear it to see what it would do. And every time I tried to get a moldavite stone, like either it wouldn't happen or like I would order it from Etsy and it was out of stock. So I think I was just clearly not meant to have it at that time anyway. So if there's a particular period of time where I will have it, I will. I wear particular stones on a regular basis. So I'm almost always wearing an opal ring. And can I say that I notice that it does something different for me than when I'm not wearing it? No, I don't notice a difference really. when I wear the different stones that have different properties and different jewelry that I wear, do I notice a difference? No. The thing that I do know, though, is that it has helped me in the past. So when I meditate with stones is when I notice it the most. I have this piece of celestite that I absolutely love. When I meditate with it, I feel the energy of it and I feel it amplifying. It just depends on if you're really connected in to the frequency of the stone and if you can tune into it. It's like anything. It's anything on the subtle realms. You have to tune into it. So I think the reason why I don't notice it in my jewelry is because I'm not meditating on my jewelry every day. It's just something that I wear.
All right, let's step away from the specifics of jewelry for a second and just come back to the concept of this like soul-led, soul-aligned business. Because I feel like that's something that we're more and more striving for in this day and age. Most of us, we want our livelihood to be made from something that we really believe in and that we're really good at. And with Flora, she was fortunate enough to have found that direction. What's your advice for people who are looking for that?
It's a good question. There are people that feel guided to something and they don't know why. They're feeling like they need to do something for whatever reason. If you are feeling guided towards something and it's just not working out, but you have this strong pull in your heart that you know that it's something you're meant to do, don't give up on it. Because that means that it may just not be the right time. And I know that this was the case with Flora. She struggled with her business for many, many, many years. Her family were naysayers. Her family were like, oh my gosh, this is, the investment is too much, this and this and that. She stuck by it. She stuck by it and knew that this is something that she needed to do. She had this business, I believe, for almost 16 years. And it's just now that she's turning it into the business that is more heart and soul led than what it was before. And this is why her business is going to be more successful now than it was before, because this is more in line with what she is meant to do. My first bit of advice is that what your soul is meant to do is often not far from what you're already doing. When you think about the fact that I'm doing the Akashic Records now, that I'm reading the Akashic Records, you might ask me, well, that has nothing to do with design work. That has nothing to do with what you've been doing in your life, what you had been doing in your life for 20 some years. But I will argue that from a very young age, that every single person in my life had always said to me, wow, you have such a wild imagination. Your imagination is huge. Like I would tell my mom these big elaborate dreams that I would have when I was a kid. And she would always laugh and just say, gosh, you have such an imagination. And it's like that imagination, that creativity, all of that I cultivated over the years has allowed me to be able to be in this space of being in the Akashic Records, be able to receive the information in a way that is creative, that I can understand and feel into and deliver the message in a way that is understandable. All of the design work was not for waste because I'm able to design my own graphics. I'm able to design my own website. I'm able to do all of these other, sort of tasks for my soul-led business that allows me to be successful. So whatever it is that you're good at, it's going to be an amplification of that. It may not look exactly the way you think it might look, but once you get there, you're going to see the trajectory and you're going to see the connection. So don't go looking too far from what you're doing. So if you happen to be, let's say, a medical professional, then maybe you are in the healing arts. Maybe you are doing energy healing without even realizing you're doing it with your patients. It's things like that. So that would be my biggest advice. Don't look too hard for it because it's probably right in front of you.
Love that. Love that. That's really good advice. Because ultimately it's always what comes naturally to us that we end up excelling at. Mm-hmm. All right. Now the moment I've been waiting for, I want to talk about energetic notes.
I know, they're so cute.
That was the coolest little surprise that came at the end of that session that just came completely out of nowhere. No questions that were asked on this particular subject matter. And it was like through bringing up Flora's dad that we came to this particular conversation. And it was just one of those like, wow, magic moments.
Yeah.
that, clearly brought Flora so much joy to think back to that time and to that connection she had with this boy when she was a teenager. So what are energetic notes?
So this was the very first time I had seen it in this way. I had seen something similar in other sessions, but this was the very first time it was presented to me as actual like energetic notes. So in the vision during the session, what I saw was literally like them writing on pieces of paper, writing the note and handing it to each other. Now, that's not what happened because it's an energetic thing, but that was the visual that they gave me. I have seen it in the past where we will connect with certain people. That person will activate something in your energy, whether it's a spiritual awakening or whether it is, triggering a wound or whatever it happens to be. We do this constantly. We're doing this all the time, especially with people in our soul family. We have a tendency to connect with each other just to remind each other who we are. Even if maybe we don't spend a whole lifetime together, we'll connect for 5-10 minutes or a day or a week. And just spending that time with the person allows you to have that connection and that remembrance on a soul level. This took it like a little step further. It took it one step further, which was they specifically were meeting up to remind each other of these particular things. The way that they presented it was so sweet and so beautiful that I had never seen it presented that way. And everybody has their own way of how they're presenting the information, how they're showing up in the energy. And that just happened to be the way that they did. And it was beautiful.
So why do it this way? Like you said that if they ended up hanging out together for the entirety of their life, they wouldn't have this impetus to go seeking more. So what? If their life is so good together, right? You almost think, well, let them just be happy.
Yeah. It depends on the person's life purpose at that time. For example, there's no reason why I wouldn't be able to have the connection with my divine partner and just be in bliss and live out the rest of this lifetime with my divine partner. And if it would have been up to me, I would have met this divine partner when I was 9, 10, from a very young age. The only thing I ever wanted in my whole life was to be in a beautiful, loving, romantic relationship, even though I had no idea what that looked like. The one thing that I wanted in life the most is the one thing that has eluded me most of my life. And why is that? Well, sometimes when we get exactly what we want, we neglect everything else. And especially in the space that I was in as a child, as well as a young adult, in that understanding nothing about what unconditional love is, what love is, really only ever being in codependency, I would probably connect to somebody, be in codependency, and continue to be that way for the rest of my life, thereby not doing my spiritual work, thereby not having the experiences that I've had, thereby not doing what I'm doing now. So a lot of the pain and suffering and sorrow and loneliness and all of the things that I've experienced have actually been catalysts for where I am now, the awakening space that I'm in now, the peace that I have now, the love that I have now within myself, which I probably would have never cultivated had I been with my divine partner from the beginning. That's not to say that I'm not going to tell the universe now that, hey, guess what? I'm ready. But this is why in this particular lifetime for them, for Flora and this boy, it was not meant to happen, because had they been together, it would have just been bliss for the whole rest of their lives potentially. And if that were the case, it's kind of like, what's the point of coming down here if you're just going to be in bliss and avoid all of the challenges and avoid all the lessons? You might as well just stay on the other side, So
I don't know. Sounds all right to me, because you get, pizza and
cats,
cats
and chihuahuas,
all of our favorite things.
Exactly.
So so this was a growth lifetime for them, is kind of what you're saying, right?
At least for her. I don't know what it has been for him because I can't look into his records, but at least for her, yes.
So they would have had potentially other lifetimes together where they would have been together and would have been in bliss together, but not necessarily experienced the type of exponential growth that she's experienced in this life.
Correct.
And they might do that again down the track in another lifetime.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's not to say that we can't have those lifetimes. We certainly can. And we talked a little bit about this in one of the previous episodes about having sort of vacation lifetimes or having lifetimes of that are really not challenging to recover from other challenging lifetimes. So it's not to say that we can't have them. It's just so happens that, you know, for me personally, I'm not in one of those lifetimes.
No, I don't think I am either.
Yeah.
Just as well.
Yeah.
I love so much these conversations that take us a little bit behind the veil and unveil the mechanics of how it's all orchestrated.
Yeah.
Thank you so much yet again for shedding light on these things.
My pleasure. And as usual, I always say that this is just my corner of what I know in the universe, and that is not a whole lot. So, you know, there could be 10 times more information out there, 1,000 times more information out there that could bring more clarification to this. But as we speak now, this is the information I have.
Good enough for me.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julia. Until next time.
Until next time.
If you would like to get in touch with either Julia or myself, feel free to head to my website at infinitesoullove.com. You can also follow me on all social media at infinitesoullove1111. And that is on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Thanks so much, and see you next week.